Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dishing Drama with Dana Wilkey Uncensored. We have officially moved to Patreon. Here's a sneak peek of Dishing Drama with Dana Wilkey. Hey, you guys. Oh my gosh, what a week. I have been on the phone just talking to all these different people that I respect about gossip and things that are happening. And, thanks to a patron who told me how to get a hold of Kevin Blatt, better known as KB. He has a company, if you guys aren't familiar, called reputationmd.com. What he's famous for is, of course, being a Hollywood fixer in a way, not in the traditional way of let's say, I don't know, a Marty Singer or a fixer in the way that an Anthony Pellicano is. He's got his own style of fixing, and celebrities work with him in different ways. And also people that get scandalous materials work with him to try to see if the things that they get have any value. It's kind of an interesting way he works. And I am going to let him tell you about it, because where he's evolved over the years from sort of dealing with sex tapes to do with, he's had encounters with Ray J on Kim Kardashian's sex tape. He was embroiled in the Mark Ebner 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton sex tape scandal. He was involved with that. So, he's kind of evolved as a character over those years since the, I guess, dark 2000s. Dark to now. So let me go ahead and bring Katie. Hi, hun. How are you?
I'm good. How are you on this beautiful Saturday morning?
I am so good. I struggled to sleep last night, but when I woke up today, I was so excited about our conversation. It rejazzed me.
I have that effect on women.
I bet you do.
Yeah.
I know there's a line of women always out the door for you, which is so interesting to me. How do you do it?
Not a line, but there's definitely a couple dots along the way.
And you famously will not date anyone over 30, right?
Well, no, I date mid-30s. But again, that's 20 years younger than me. And I mentally, I don't know. The older I get, the younger I seem to be attracted to. I guess I'm going to be a dirty old man the rest of my life.
I think it's kind of interesting to understand, why do guys go for the 30 under? Explain that to me, because I would think you would want to talk about stuff you have in common, but is it all sex, or is that really just what you're looking for at this phase in your life? I'm just curious about that before we move on.
Any other answer to that question is going to make me sound horribly sexist.
Well, you certainly know how to compliment a woman. Now, if you'll excuse me.
So I'm not going to say, well, why do you buy a new car? Right. And I'm not going to say that. All I'm going to say is that I'm probably the most incredibly immature 54-year-old man you're ever going to meet. And I think in my head, I've never really gotten past the age of 35. So I think that's why I have this arrested development. I think I live in this perpetual state of arrested development.
This is a really hot topic right now. Did you know this?
No.
Yeah. So all these really mainstream newspapers have been covering the fact that there really truly is a psychological age that we all stop at. So some people could be 70 years old and they still can't see themselves older than 30, or there's some age that your brain locks into and you don't go past. Yeah.
As I'm looking into the monitor right now, I see a full head of hair. So I totally understand what you're saying. It's weird. And I don't know how many bald men you have listening to your or watching your podcast, but I know that most of us, we walk past the mirror and sometimes we just look and go, who is that person? Who's this old guy looking back at me? But in my head, I'm 32, 35, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a real thing. I just wanted you to feel better. It's not like you're a sexist jerk. It's actually you being really honest about something that a lot of people go through and they don't want to acknowledge, you know? So
I will say that out here in LA, I find that the older the woman, the more jaded or more negative experiences that come along with it have happened. And again, there's so many douchebags out here. So the dating pool for a woman like yourself or someone 35 to your age of 36, 37, you basically run into the same kinds of people over and over again. With me, I don't know what it is. I think it's just the younger women. You open a car door for them, you open a door, or you buy them a purse or whatever it is. They're so appreciative and they're just so like, wow. Maybe that's what I like ultimately. I don't know.
That's actually really so interesting. I really like that you said that and you bothered to say it, because it's true. After LA, you've been cycled through so many like narcissists or rich guys that have let you down, or you bought into the Hollywood dream and it just destroyed you or one of your friends. That when guys do those things that in the beginning probably would make you go like, this is everything. Like, wow, I can't believe it's so exciting. Sure. You kind of feel like, oh, here we go again. Like, oh boy. And I think that's a really true thing. And I could see as a man, if you're going to bother to do it for someone, you would want to do it for someone who would get excited about it.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Really?
Yeah, I think subconsciously that's probably what it is. I think there's not only that, but it's funny, I work out here. A very good friend of mine is the rapper Too Short, and not to name drop, but Short is known for being a player, right? And all he does is sing about women and filthy, dirty lyrics about women and sex and all that stuff. But he's also basically a poet. He writes about this stuff. And he said to me a while ago, he said, K Bizzle, that's my rapper nickname. K Bizzle, you need to find yourself a woman who's fresh off the boat from Ohio.
Yeah, exactly. From a small state is what he means by boat. Yeah.
There's no body of water.
Yeah, no, it just means maybe what he really means is fresh off the bus. Like think back to the Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. Days.
Right. You just find yourself a woman that's fresh out here from Iowa or Connecticut that hasn't figured out how it works yet. In other words, that they haven't met a guy that drives a McLaren and lives in an $8 million house yet. And you're going to be in there for a little while. And then he said, look, within 5 or 6 months, they're going to figure it all out and realize that
you're not good enough. You're like not level. Yeah. The different levels up.
But for those 3 months or 4 months, it's bliss. It's bliss.
Didn't he also tell you, though, that you should meet a smart woman and that there are beautiful, smart women as much as there are like girls that aren't so smart?
Well, I think the way the way it was versed was K Bizzle. You should stop dating these playmates and porn stars because there's educated women out there that are just as freaky as what you've been doing. Find yourself a doctor or a lawyer that's just as freaky. And then he showed me a couple. So I mean, he does this for a living. But he's right. They exist. They exist.
So let me ask you, I have so much to ask you, and you're such a wealth of knowledge, especially about Hollywood secrets. It was sort of hard to know where to begin. Okay. But I really wanted to ask you about the sex tape business. Now, I know that there was a big article written about you in Wired magazine related to this kind of concept. Mm-hmm. And I did read it. And I understand from that article that the business has changed a lot over the years. But could you tell me a little bit about the sex tape business back when Paris Hilton went through it versus, let's say, now?
Okay, so I guess we have to rewind to prior to Paris Hilton. We have to go back to Pam and Tommy Lee, really, because that was the tape that kind of launched this whole modern amazement about sex tapes. And at the time when Pam and Tommy Lee had their tape out, they were victimized. They never made a dime off the web or off their tape. It was, as you know, if anybody watched the television show Pam and Tommy, the safe was stolen from the garage and it contained a sex tape of theirs.
Can I tell you my theory? Maybe you could know. Okay. Yeah. I think Rick Solomon took it.
Rick Solomon took Pam and Tommy's?
Yeah, because Rick was dating Pam and he was good friends with her and he was over their house all the time. Just saying.
He also married her twice.
Right.
Yeah. So Rick and I became very good friends, believe it or not. And I'll get into that whole story in a second.
And I know Rick too. It's just saying, I mean, nothing to Rick. He is who he is,
So when that tape came out, not only did it make case law as far as copyright, rights of publicity, and what I mean by rights of publicity, or ROP, is in the entertainment business, the only person that could use the name Dana Wilkey is Dana Wilkey. Right? If you've registered and trademarked your name. So along comes somebody that says, hey, I've got a sex tape of Dana Wilkey. Well, the first thing to do to shut it down is basically state that they don't have your rights of publicity, not to mention they don't have your permission to put out such a tape. None of that factored into Pam and Tommy because it was so new and nobody knew what this internet was going to become. In fact, Tommy Lee himself didn't go after Seth Warshawski at IEG or Rand Gauthier because both he and Pam thought, I never heard of this internet thing. Like, this internet's nothing. Who's going to ever see this thing? We might as well just let it go. It'll die off and nobody will ever talk about it again. Hence, here we are 25 years later talking over what? The internet. And they obviously weren't very good at predicting the future. Now, along comes Paris and Rick in 2003. Tape is shopped to us over at sexbrat.com, which was the website that I was working with at the time. And it was brought to us by a roommate of Rick Solomon's named Donald Thrasher. And Donald Thrasher had taken a tape out of the ceiling. Acoustical drop ceilings have the ability to, you push up on one of those squares and you could hide anything up there. That's old school, right? So Rick had, I don't know where the hell there was an acoustical tile ceiling where he lived, but that's where he kept this tape. And I guess Mr. Thrasher enjoyed watching this tape. I've been told by some people it's because he was enamored with Rick more than he was with Paris.
Oh my God, that's juicy. I didn't know that part.
That's what I was told. Again, that's alleged.
Okay, alleged.
So so when I was shopped the tape, the guys that were behind it, or the guys that were my money guys, said, hey, we're prepared to give him $50,000 up front and a third of the back end profits, but you need to go vet it and make sure that's legit. So I went, I met, I saw, and Don was like, of course I'm doing this with Rick's permission. He wants to put this out. And we said, okay, fair enough. And do
you believe that? Because that's sort of another argument around that story, which is whether or not Rick really gave him. Rick said he didn't, but what do you believe?
Well, now looking back all these years later, I believe that Rick was in on it, and I think he used a third party to shop it. And again, it was a scary time. I think he was a little fearful of Paris's parents. I mean, he knew the kind of money this family was worth, and he also knew the status of this family. I mean, for those of you at home, and you know this because you lived out here, very powerful in the real estate business out here. And obviously the name goes back to the hotel chain. Conrad Hilton is Rick's father. So when this was initially being shopped, I don't believe that Rick knew, or I do believe that Rick knew, but I think he was trying to stay as far away from it as possible.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously, we were trying to take a page out of the playbook of Seth Warshawski up in Seattle with Pam and Tommy, the guys that were the internet backbone of this whole project. They were best friends with Seth, and they resided in Seattle. This was the Marvad Corporation, Ian and Roger. And the thing about Seth was Seth put out a warning shot before he put out the Pam and Tommy Lee sex tape. He basically said at such and such date and such time via press release, we were going to be showing this tape in its entirety. Never fully intentioning to do that. He just wanted to create a ripple, some buzz, that people would go to sexbrat.com and basically, go through, peruse what we had. And at that time,
it was a marketing stunt, like clickbait.
Correct. Way before there was clickbait.
Right.
So at that point, we had Dr. Laura Schlesinger, who was a radio personality, and she had a sex tape. There were a couple other things that you could see on sexbrat.com, but none of them had the allure, obviously, of Paris Hilton. So my job was primarily to create that undercurrent and make it a splash. And I did so by sending out 2 clips of that X-ray vision tape. If you remember, it was a green tinged X-ray vision tape where Paris's eyes are literally
like an alien,
sparkling like an alien, right, in the dark. And you got the feeling when you watched that tape that you weren't supposed to be watching it, which again was the allure with Pam and Tommy. And what makes a really good sex tape, just for those of you watching this at home, is that feeling, that creepy feeling that you're not supposed to be seeing it, or you're looking through a peephole and you're looking as a voyeur at something that you're not supposed to be looking at. That's what that original green tinged X-ray vision tape did. Now, I sent out a clip to Mark Malkin. At that time, he worked at Us Weekly. Now he's at Variety. And I sent it to Bonnie Teagle, who was the head of Entertainment Tonight. And as you would, these people shared that clip that I sent with other people in their offices, their producers, editors, higher-ups, lawyers. And before you knew it, I get to this day accredited with the world's first viral video, believe it or not, because that video just blew up. And nobody could have ever forecast that, I would be this marketing genius. It wasn't that I was a marketing genius. I just happened to send it to the right 2 people.
Yeah.
That were rentas, and they wanted to send it off to everybody that they could. And before you knew it, it became humongous. And I remembered laying in my bed the day I called the Howard Stern show, and I said to Gary Baba Booey, hey, I would like to break the story about how I got this tape and what's going on, because it's starting to blow up right now on your show. And they said, yeah, great. We'll have you on in the morning. I drove up from San Diego to Los Angeles and checked into the Sheraton, which just happens to be across the street from me now. It's so weird how all of this foreshadowed everything. And I checked in, and I remembered going to bed knowing that I had to get up in 3 hours to do the Stern show. But I'm watching David Letterman's top 10 list. David Letterman, obviously, for those youngsters out there,
it was huge. Yeah.
This was a late night guy way before Seth Meyers or Jimmy Fallon. And the top 10 list was the top 10 reasons why Paris made a sex tape. And I just remember my heart started pounding. Holy shit. I'm in the middle of the biggest news story of 2003.
Yeah.
And of course, I did the Howard Stern show. And I got to tell you, for those of you who are at home, you're on YouTube already. When you're done watching this podcast, I want you to look up Kevin Blatt, Howard Stern, because I was incentivized by the guys that I did this tape with. They said, well, how do you want to get paid on this other than a percentage? And I said, I don't know. Promotion wise, every time I get sexbrat.com out there online, I think you should pay me $1,000. And they said, okay, well, you're going on Stern tomorrow, right? And I said, yeah. I said, how about every time I say sexbrat.com, you pay me $1,000? And every time I get Howard Stern to say sexbrat.com, you pay me $2,000. And they said, fine. How much could you actually plug something, right?
Oh, you went nuts.
I went nuts. I probably said it 28 times, right? So it was the beginning of my public relations career in the adult business.
And also the beginning of product placement, because that hadn't really transpired yet. I ran a product placement company for many years. So I find this really interesting from that perspective as well.
It also started the plug sheet, which Stern implemented afterwards, which means that every time you go on the Stern show, you only get 2 to 3 plugs a show. I was egregious with the amount of time. I was just like, well, sexbrat.com really believes that we're the victims here, Howard. And I remember Howard going, you're the victims. You got an heir, a billionaire heiress banging. Hey, but you're the victim? I'm like, well, we did pay $50,000, Howard, and we weren't able to show it. And, boo-hoo. But again, what that did was create more outrage and more. And this was back when there was 25 million listeners on terrestrial radio before Sirius XM.
And Howard Stern was just the biggest. I mean, he was so big.
Yeah. So when you did Howard back then, your servers would blow up or your website would crash if you didn't have the adequate amount of hosting. And so that was the jump off for me. And after that, I just remember the news trucks camped on the bluffs outside of my house in La Costa, California. I was a preppy little Jewish guy living in San Diego above a golf course. None of my neighbors had any idea what I did for a living. And now all of a sudden I became the porn king of La Costa. And that presented itself with some challenges as well. So
yeah, they were like, we want to call the HOA and get KB out.
right?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting time in my life. In 2003, I had never been sued before. And before you knew it, I was getting sued by the Hiltons. I was getting sued by Rick Solomon. I was getting sued by Paris Hilton.
But wait, did you guys release that black and white video finally on, even though you didn't intend to, did you actually release that night vision video on the site on the date you said? So you never did?
We never did. And
only the clips.
Only the clip that went out. And then obviously the judge basically said, there was a injunction to not show it. But again, I did my job, because later on, it was never told to me by the owners of the websites that there was malware all over sexbrat.com. So in actuality, when you went to that website, what happened was we would grab your browser and direct where you were able to go visit. So in other words, if you would go to a search engine like Google or Yahoo back then to go search for something, what we did was we changed your browser. So after going to sexbrat.com, if you went to go look up Dana Wilkey, you would go type in Dana Wilkey, but all of a sudden you would look and it wasn't Google. It was something betasearch.com or
right.
startsurfing.com, I think was the name of the thing. But basically, that's when you would get paid per search and per click. The commerce of the internet's changed, and I don't want to bore your audience with all that stuff, but it was never told to me that there was actually malicious malware on that website until years later. So my job in getting people to go to that website was incredible, because they hijacked so many people's browsers.
No, I get it. Yeah, wow, that's actually crazy that was their real revenue model.
Well, what's even crazier is the revenue model before that. These guys were in the 900 number business, or what was then referred to as audio text, right? So back in the day, people used to talk to people to get off sexually.
Yeah.
And they had something called the Santa Claus scam. So many years prior to this, and I didn't know this either, they had a commercial that had run right around Christmas time and said, "Hey kids, what do you want for Christmas? When you hear the high-pitched tone, hold your phone up to the TV and tell Santa what you want." And that high-pitched frequency that came on is called DTMF, or dual tone multi-frequency. It's the same sound you hear fax machines making, right? And it's a dialer it would dial a number in Chad, Africa, which was unrestricted as far as billing telephone stuff. And you get billed $200 a minute. It was nefarious. But again, it's the reason why these people couldn't ever bill over the phone ever again, or have any kind of, I think they settled for $12 million with the FCC, but I think they made probably $200 million.
Oh my gosh, that's insane. I'm glad you're telling it though, because it just goes to show how dark, those times where it was the Wild West. It really was.
Wild West. It was hard to govern anything that was outside of this country. So you could put up a website on a foreign URL or bounce IPs, and there was nothing you could do to shut it down back then.
Like, okay, so this is also confusing in that Paris Hilton story. Maybe you can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
So there were two videos, one that never gets released, that's night vision, that the roommate allegedly steals from Rick Solomon and sells for $50K. And then another one, because Rick Solomon convinces Paris Hilton to do a proper one where she's showing off her body in a way she'd like, her makeup's done, it's in a fancy hotel room on brand. And they're like, this is the real sex tape, let's say. And Rick then supposedly does a legitimate sex tape with Paris that she's supposed to get some sort of benefit from.
Right.
But it's unclear at this point if Paris is really on board with this sex tape or not on board with this sex tape. And then once it's sold, and Rick's making money off it. We know he makes money, but does she ever receive any? She says no. But like, I wondered about that. Like, did she really?
She is a liar. Liar.
That's hot. 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 That's hot.
So, I mean, look.
Okay, you got that. Thank you. You have to now tell me the story.
Full of shit. So, to put out a legal sex tape or any movie that depicts nudity or any type of sexuality in it, if you watch a movie where there's nude scenes or love scenes, or if you look at the back of a DVD case that contains pornography, what you're going to see on there is USC 2257, custodian of records. And what that means is there's a person that sits in an office 12 hours a day that will field any type of questions or investigations by a federal agent into the validity of the age or age verification of the performers in said tape. In other words, you and I make a sex tape, Dana. I need two forms of... Boy, would you be disappointed. Not really. But anyway, there's two forms of identifications that needs to accompany that tape on your behalf. And that would be either a passport or driver's license. And you also have to sign off for your rights of publicity to be exploited or used commercially. In other words, it's a model release that you have to state you're over 18 years of age. And the reason why USC 2257 became a thing was many years ago, there was a porn actress by the name of Tracy Lords. You probably remember that name. She became a B-movie actress in a bunch of John Waters movies. But Tracy Lords was in the adult industry at 15, 16 years of age, acting with a fake ID like she was over 18. And people in the adult industry were gobsmacked when they realized, because this girl fucked like a 30-year-old woman, but she was 15. I mean, Ron Jeremy, all these old porn stars, they were all having sex with her on camera. So what that did was, once they flagged it and realized it was child pornography, there were people that went to jail in the adult industry for the obscenity and for child pornography. And that changed everything. So nowadays, in addition to the rights of publicity, the way that you could shut down a tape that gets out there without your permission, Visa and MasterCard are not going to process for a website that has any type of illegalities involving that site. Any type of question about the age verification or the content therein, they don't want to have anything to do with animals.
Yeah. So when they set up a vendor account, what KB is saying is that when you set up a vendor account with a credit card company as a corporation, often that's legitimate, often they will ask you to tell what the business is and validate the business before they allow charges. And the more charges and money you make, the more they audit you in regards to this. So like you hit different thresholds, they really get into your business. And that's what KB is talking about. Go ahead, KB.
Right. So that's primarily how sex tapes work. So when people say to me, oh, just amazing what you were able to do, how you were able to put out that tape without Paris's permission is just incredible. And I've had people in the industry say this to me. And I look at him and go, schmuck, aren't you in the adult business? You know how this works. Don't you get model releases for every porn star in your adult movies? Well, of course.
So did she sue him because she didn't get paid the money she was promised?
Okay. So initially, she sued him to stop the distribution of the original tape because she was not involved in the original tape. That green-tinged X-ray vision tape, she was blindsided. She was in Australia filming a movie called House of Wax at that time. She had just started blowing up. And at the end of the day, she really had no idea that this was going on. She made a tape with her boyfriend, who she loved very much. That tape was never supposed to be seen by anybody else. And then this happens. Now, the uproar and the general curiosity of this tape caused so many web operators out there to put, we have the Paris Hilton sex tape, right? So there were so many websites that made money off of her rights of publicity in Australia and Singapore, whatever. Hey, buy the Paris Hilton video here. put your credit card in, pay $200 and we have the full tape. And then you would go join that website and they didn't have shit. Right. So there were people making millions and millions and millions of dollars just off of her name and likeness without even having the content. That's where the rights of publicity comes in, right? So then later on, the clip ends up online. People start sharing the clips. And before you know it, everybody's putting this little screenshot saying that we have the Paris Hilton sex tape. So all the fraud, as you could imagine, is just everywhere.
Yeah, running rampant.
And Rick gets sued. I get sued. Everybody gets sued. And then one morning, Rick wakes up and is like, I need to call Paris and tell her we need to do our own tape because everybody's making money off of this except for us. It got out of our hands, and now what do we do? And she was dating Nick Carter at the time from the Backstreet Boys, and Rick called her up and said, hey, we need to put out our own tape. Meet me at the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills, and you could get Final Cut. You could pretty much put whatever you want in it. We don't have to show close-ups of your badge. We don't have to show cum shots. We don't have to be really gross, and you'll get Final Cut. And that's why when you watch that tape, she's wearing the sexy boots up to her knees, and she's fully aware that the camera's there, and she's playing up. Everything's playful and fun and nice. And again, it's not too graphic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she gives a blowjob. He comes, they have sex, but there's nothing pornographic, really. I mean, it's pornographic, but it's nothing like you see now on Pornhub if you're going and looking for sex stuff. It's
right. It was choreographed is what you're saying. So yes. Did she get a piece of the revenue from that tape from the beginning? I mean, so what do you think?
The full color version, the One Night in Paris, this was now.
Yeah, now it's called The One Night in Paris.
Right, which came out through Red Light District Video. Yes, she got a piece.
Okay. And then so later, the way she hangs her hat on the fact that she didn't get a piece is that she sues Rick again, I guess, separately, which is to say that she never got any money off the tape.
Which was a lie.
So that's not true. It was just for optics.
Optics. And
wow. Oh my God. I feel like I can't believe the level. It's amazing.
Well, there's levels to everything. And when you go deep enough out here in LA, as you know, and you've had Ebner on, so you know that not all that glitters is gold and not everything that you see is believable. Like,
can you believe the book that she just wrote? Because the book that she just wrote, she basically doubles down on that whole storyline. That's why I was like, I have to ask you.
I've been calling Paris a whore now for 20 years. This is the 20th anniversary of this tape. And guess what? If it wasn't true what I'm saying, wouldn't I have been sued repeatedly?
Yeah.
The Kardashians have sued me. Like,
okay, wait, stop. That's a great parlay to the Kardashians. Okay. Yeah. So you recently not recently, but maybe a year ago, you got a lot of press because you, by the way, started another scandal. I don't even know if you're aware of it, but for the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month, and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about, and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?